If you're looking for really profound insights into how life, history, love, how it all actually works, you might not need a whole stack of philosophy books. Maybe just a shortcut to understanding one, admittedly massive, novel. Today, we are diving into Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. Now, we all know the reputation, right? The incredible length, the sprawling family trees, the fact you might need like a dedicated spreadsheet for the characters' nicknames, but we're aiming to cut through that noise today. Our mission is to distill the core story, the key relationships, and, well, the lasting wisdom that makes this book a masterpiece, all delivered to you without needing, 6 months blocked out on your calendar. Think of this as your rapid, focused way into understanding why people still call this the ultimate authority on the human condition.
That really is the key. It's more than just history. It's almost like a manual for living. And the scope, it's just spectacular. Yeah. It weaves together the lives of several interconnected aristocratic Russian families, but sets their very personal, very intimate stories right against the huge chaotic backdrop of the Napoleonic Wars. We're talking roughly 1805 to 1812.
Okay, so to get a handle on the whole thing, we need to start with the parts. Tolstoy builds this world around 4 main families, and they're almost defined by their contrasts, their contradictions. They represent different ways of facing life's chaos. Let's start with the Rostovs. These guys are all heart, all impulse, incredibly warm, generous, full of life. Think Natasha, Nikolai. But that passion, it makes them, well, dangerously impractical sometimes. Always seems like they're one bad decision away from some kind of ruin, financial or social.
And they stand in such sharp contrast to the Bolkonskis. That's the family of the intellect, the head. Fierce pride, discipline, sometimes maybe a little too much discipline. Prince Andrei, Princess Maria, they value thought, stoicism, often overshowing emotion. A lot of their journey is about learning to let go of that intellectual stiffness and allowing real human feeling to come through.
Then you've got the character who arguably holds the whole philosophical journey together, Pierre Bezukhov. He basically is the Bezukhov family in the story. He's this awkward, very philosophical, deeply good-hearted guy, kind of an outsider, who just suddenly inherits this enormous fortune.
Yeah.
And he's completely adrift in high society.
Yeah.
His initial stumbling lets Tolstoy critique that whole world.
Right. And rounding it out, you need the opposition, the moral contrast. That's the Kuragins, Anatole and Helene. Now, it's easy to just write them off as villains, but Tolstoy gives them this charm, this surface appeal, which actually makes them really dangerous. They represent a kind of moral emptiness, manipulative, opportunistic, just living for pleasure and climbing the social ladder. They're the vacuum at the top, really highlighting the threat to the goodness of the Rostovs or the seriousness of the Bolkonskis.
And it's the clash between these really different types of people that drives so much of the story forward. It's fascinating watching their personal lives, their internal struggles collide with these huge historical events they just can't control. Right, take Pierre. After he gets all that money, he's desperately trying to figure out what to do, trying to find some kind of purpose. This is where he gets into Freemasonry for a bit.
Yeah, and we should probably mention, in 19th century Russia, Freemasonry wasn't quite what maybe we think of today. It was a popular sort of intellectual, spiritual movement for some, offered ideals, community, a bit of esoteric knowledge outside the main church or the court.
So Pierre wasn't just like joining a club.
No, he was trying to find a ready-made meaning for his life, almost by it. But Tolstoy shows it's a dead end for him. Pierre's real journey is realizing that purpose doesn't come from secret handshakes or inherited titles. It comes from messy, real connections. Actual service to other people. He has to kind of shed all the theories to find real happiness.
And his journey is so interestingly mirrored by Prince Andrei Bolkonsky. Andrei starts out searching for pure military glory, heroism. He wants to be one of the great men of history. And that ambition leads him straight into the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805.
Austerlitz, yeah, that's such a pivotal moment historically and for Andrei personally. It's where that whole grand idea of glory just collapses for him. He gets wounded, he's lying there on the battlefield, and instead of seeing heroic deeds, he just sees the sky, this vast, indifferent, endless sky above him.
Wow.
And that epiphany, realizing his own ambition, his desire for fame, is just so small and petty compared to, that it fundamentally changes him.
And that disillusionment, it fuels his later cynicism, right? His withdrawal. But then it's Natasha Rostov, with all her vibrant, impulsive energy, who starts to pull him back towards life, towards feeling again.
Exactly. And Natasha's own story is about dealing with that impulsiveness. She makes this huge mistake, almost running off with a completely unsuitable Anatole Kuragin. Causes immense heartbreak, scandal.
Right. A total disaster.
But her journey is one of really profound, earned maturity. It shows that, mistakes don't have to define you. Her redemption comes through her capacity for deep empathy, especially later when she's caring for Andrei. And eventually she finds this grounded, lasting peace with Pierre.
And Nikolai Rostov, too, Natasha's brother, he has his own Path Army service, dealing with the family's money problems.
And finding his own kind of stability, interestingly, by marrying Princess Maria Bolkonskaya. It brings those two very different families together in the end.
So all these personal journeys, the heartbreaks, the searching, the mistakes, they're happening while history is just relentlessly marching on, culminating in Napoleon's invasion of 1812.
And the novel blends it all so seamlessly. The personal and the historical aren't separate tracks. They're completely interwoven.
It does more than just weave them, though. It really forces you to confront what that conflict meant. I mean, the burning of Moscow, that's a huge turning point.
Absolutely huge. And it wasn't just, an accident of war. It was a conscious strategy, a massive sacrifice by the Russians themselves.
They basically said, Napoleon, you can have the city, but it'll be ashes. They refused to let him have the capital and its resources, forcing his army to retreat back into that brutal Russian winter.
Exactly. And that collective act, that refusal, leads us straight into Tolstoy's most radical ideas, really.
Yeah.
His philosophy of history.
Which brings us right to the title, doesn't it? War and Peace. It's the central contrast. War is the noise, the chaos, human ambition, the ego running wild.
Power, glory, all the external stuff.
Yeah. And peace is the quiet, the internal life, family, love, connection, finding some kind of spiritual clarity.
And Tolstoy's insight, I think, is that they're interconnected. War obviously disrupts lives, destroys things. But peace is this quiet, persistent force that ultimately restores and endures. It's the everyday life that matters most.
But he uses that contrast to launch this major attack on how we usually think about history, right? The second half of the book, especially the epilogues.
Oh, absolutely. He completely dismantles the great man theory of history. This is fundamental to understanding the book's philosophy.
The idea we're often taught that history is shaped by brilliant generals, powerful rulers, the Napoleons, the Alexanders.
Tolstoy just says, nope, this is not how it works. He argues history is way too big, too complex, too chaotic for any single person to control, no matter how smart or ambitious they think they are. He goes out of his way to show Napoleon as just, well, a man. He focuses on small details. Napoleon having a cold before a battle, feeling hungry, making mistakes based on bad intel. It humanizes him, but also diminishes his supposed control over events.
So the famous leaders, they're just riding the wave thinking they're steering.
Pretty much. They're symbols, maybe, caught in historical currents much larger than themselves. The real engine of history, for Tolstoy, is something he calls the milia. It's the collective will, the sum total of countless small choices and actions by ordinary people. The common soldiers, the citizens of Moscow. Their combined actions, their shared spirit, that's what really shapes events. It wasn't one general's plan that defeated Napoleon. It was the immense collective inertia of the Russian people saying, no further. It's a deeply, almost democratic view of history.
That shifts everything. Because it means that search for meaning, the thing that drives Pierre crazy early on,
Right.
The answer isn't to become some great historical figure yourself. It's something else entirely.
It's about accepting your place within that larger flow, maybe. Tolstoy seems to conclude that true happiness, real peace, it's just not found in chasing those external markers, wealth, status, power. Pierre tries, Andrei tries.
And they end up miserable or disillusioned.
Exactly. The only place they find genuine, lasting peace is in simpler things, in faith, in real, messy human love, and in quiet dedication to family, to community.
Okay, so let's bring it back to today. Why should someone listening now care about what happened to Russian nobles over 200 years ago? What's the takeaway?
Because the core questions Tolstoy grapples with, they're timeless. The answers he suggests are incredibly relevant.
First off, I think, is the value he places on simplicity. Almost every character who chases the big, flashy goals, glory, intellectual perfection, social power, they end up unhappy. The real lesson seems to be that fulfillment, genuine peace, lies in the ordinary stuff. Home, family, real human connection. That's what survives the wars, both literal and metaphorical.
And connected to that is the power of change and forgiveness. I mean, think about the mistakes. Natasha's near elopement is a huge public scandal. Pierre is aimless for ages. Andrei is locked in pride.
Huge mistakes.
Yeah, but the novel insists people can change, they can grow. Their past doesn't have to define their future. There's always potential for redemption, for finding clarity.
It's ultimately quite hopeful, isn't it, despite all the war and suffering?
I think so. Tolstoy, leaves us feeling that war, in the end, whether it's nations fighting or just our internal conflicts, it's ultimately futile. It just brings suffering. The real victory, the only one that maybe truly matters for an individual, is achieving that inner peace, that kind of calm acceptance of life with all its chaos and unpredictability. That's the biggest win possible.
It really earns its reputation then. It's not just this epic historical story, but a deep, profound meditation on how we find meaning, how we live, how history actually happens. Definitely deserves its 5-star status for just its sheer humanity.
Absolutely. And maybe here's a final thought for you, building on Tolstoy's rejection of the great man idea. If history really isn't shaped by a few powerful figures, but by the combined effect of millions upon millions of small, everyday choices, what seemingly insignificant action are you taking today, right now, that might, just might, be part of shaping the larger forces of tomorrow?